$500, taking out the April 2025 low and currently sitting on support from the range of 2024, the consolidation that took place prior to the election. We are what seems to be pretty close to the Clarity Act being passed. And more importantly, right now, we are undergoing a dump of the Epstein files, and lots of speculation and conjecture is being put out over there. I think that it is worthy. I don't think it's worthy. I think that it's appropriate for me to weigh in as I've started digging in and just give you another reference point to go ahead and figure out what you believe to be the truth, because don't trust, verify. As a Bitcoiner, above all things, do not trust, verify. There's a lot to cover, and I think it's going to be pretty cool to cover with y'all. So I'm looking forward to that. And, dollar cost average into Bitcoin at $72,630. Do I think it's a great place to guys, let me start off with this fun chart over here. Before I even say another word, let me start off with this. Let's start off over here. All right. As far as our positioning right now, by the way, the NASDAQ here is accelerating right now with another breakdown, and is going to go ahead and see what's below. This would be a pretty big area, right? We have the April low. That's November 2025, Jordan. That's not the April low. The April low is all the way down over here. Bitcoin is trading below the April low, and NASDAQ here is significantly above. We'd be trading below the November low, and the last bit of resistance turned support. That would be a major breakdown below $23,750. Let's jump back over and find our way into all of this, starting with our positioning. And by the way, MicroStrategy, strategy, formerly known as MicroStrategy, is looking to, it seems pretty extended here to the short side. We're looking to pick up on the momentum and potentially here, or it looks like we're getting ready by the close of today to go short on MicroStrategy. Below, I have the short side stats over here, just so you know. Our normal win rate on strategy, 48%, pretty high, very high. But on the short side, I was going to go ahead. We've only had a small amount of trades, 10 trades. Max drawdown so far has been 10% and 80% win rate. That's all the data we have to go off of. We had obviously closing 2025 a nice 33%. Is Michael Saylor a good actor? Or is he a bad actor? There's no second best except the strategy shares that I sold, over 500,000 of them, because don't sell your Bitcoin, but I will sell my strategy shares. Now, I don't know if he's a bad actor or a good actor. I've personally have always been on the record as saying that, even having a little exchange over on X with what's his name? Preston Fish, and the people who have overwhelmingly supported him. So listen, I don't mean to, we'll get into that later, but we'll have to ask questions, and we have to give different viewpoints. Mine remains unfounded. I don't know. Do we not have volume? If we don't have volume, that's a bad thing. The volume is lower than normal. Let's go to this. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Are we picking back up over here? Are we good to go? I think we're better to go now, and there you go. Positioning. Strongly on the right side over here. Bitcoin currently holding an open position, unrealized at 11%. Ethereum 34%, and Cardano still short over here, basically at break even. Solana is out on the sidelines. Buy side boost, those who trade only the buy side of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana are firmly on the sidelines, enjoying life and loving life. Those who were trading V2 over here, we are approaching on Bitcoin and Ethereum to once again be roaring in the bliss. The templates are not broken. Aside from MicroStrategy potentially entering the market, everything else here is out on the sidelines, 100% in cash, as the markets here are most certainly on edge. It remains to be seen what happens next. It is amazing knowing when to be in the market, when out, and on what side. Guys, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity. We are here every day, putting the work in, staying on the right side. We will not be tomorrow and Friday. Thursday and Friday, there will be no CTM sessions. We'll pick up again on Monday. And here we go. Let's get into a little bit more over here and we'll continue. Is it a good time to buy Bitcoin? I think that this happens to be a golden zone to buy Bitcoin. And it doesn't mean because I have this line that I've drawn on this chart that it can't break. Of course it could break, but let's look at some other lines before we even get into it. And let's start over here. And so Bitcoin, strong downtrend, has the first repair over here. And we said, well, that was a repair, but it's not a meaningful repair. The meaningful repair would have been above here. We tested into the resistance, never broke above, and then have accelerated down on the breakdown of the channel, retest, and resuming down with strong momentum, trading at 72,000. This is this is the line of the invalidation of the bull market. It's always been, ever since we called the bull market breakout of 17,250. The line below would be during a liquidity crisis. We're currently not in a liquidity crisis whatsoever. So we have to ask, what is happening? Well, we will take a look at that from multiple angles. It seems to me as the orange line here is the power law floor, and that breaks, and it's right near the CTM floor that, yeah, it seems to be a really good time to buy Bitcoin. And by the way, and as you all know, obviously we had a wild card thrown at us when the new Fed chair has been nominated, and his stance on running the balance sheet seems to be a lot different than what the regime we've been in here ever since 2008. And whether or not in my own opinion, there's nothing hawkish about trying to lower rates, which I do expect that the new Fed chair is going to strongly embrace. That's the policy he's going to strongly embrace. I think that they keep the reserve management purchases continuing along, which is not outright QE, and I think that's the line he's going to walk. And I don't think that outright QE was in the cards until something breaks anyway. And I do think that as he's at the helm, if forced back to outright QE, well, the only time people go under outright QE is when they have no choice to keep the music playing. So clearly, if forced, but that all doesn't matter. Right now, the market is focused in on, wait a second, this is not the risk on play we've been running. This seems different. And markets right now are simply digesting new information. We were on the lookout. Our playbook was, and as you all know, Fed stops QT, begins balance sheet expansion, and right, that's exactly what happened. And then we said, well, the last time that happened, by the way, was right here in September 2019. Bitcoin made a lower low. The NASDAQ didn't. NASDAQ and tech led. Bitcoin made a lower low, and then it made another lower low before stabilizing. This is the global lockdowns, an anomaly, I hope, and they don't do that again. So here we are, second time, and same playbook, Bitcoin making lower low. Do I believe that liquidity is going to stabilize here and is about to be heading up? Yes. Yeah. Listen, I know everyone told you M2, global M2 is all that matters. And I told you that's absolutely ridiculous. That's a lagging indicator, a poor indicator at best, as I put it. And M1, monetary base total, rather, is what runs the show. And it has, not months later, it has every correction that Bitcoin has undergone. It has been there right on time. And then you can see now it is finally slowly beginning to turn up. The last time it turned up over here was where we called the bottom, but this was the bear market, right? This is where we called the bottom as monetary base actually turned up. We could see as the Fed was forced to pivot policy and to stop QT finally and now begin running the balance sheet the other way, we are seeing it bottom. This is not outright QE. It last time it took several weeks for that liquidity to stabilize. We didn't know that Bitcoin would make a lower low. That's why we read the charts and manage risk about everything. But over here, we see that, well, nothing has changed. If the new Fed chair says, forget it, we're done with this reserve management, balance sheet management, and we're going to start QT again, that would be a major, major, major new catalyst, and we would have to definitely change our view on the markets. But my view is that the Treasury, the Fed, and the president are going to be working together to do everything they can to run this thing hot. Reacceleration, that's where we are. I think that's all important. I don't know. Let's go ahead and continue over here. So is this an opportunity? You know what? I think that this is a massive opportunity. Does it mean we could go lower? So I'm looking at a couple of things from my own perspective. Used it as just another vantage point to make up your own. I have the bear market of 2018 low over here. I have the global lockdowns over here, and I have the bear market and FTX blow up over here. And we're back in that zone. Seems like a really good place to dollar cost average Bitcoin to me. Does that mean that we can't go lower? And I don't know what people are calling, but I imagine I think that more people put expectations that Bitcoin bottoms third quarter or fourth quarter of this year rather than putting a price on it. That's my own reality. That's just what I believe. I don't know if that's true, but I'm sure that there are other people putting out price targets and everything like that. And yeah, if you were DCAing over here at $72,000, would you then be looking to DCA and lower? Or do you think that Bitcoin has been corrupted by many of a party that we will discuss, many of a party in a moment, and that, you know what, you're not interested anymore? You're right, all those things. And hey, either which way, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. Either way, either way, let's go. I wanted to just outline a little DCA potentials over here, and this is the path that I thought we would take. So who knows what I know? And I still hope, although I probably have to put out my timeline a little bit further, that into around 950 days after the halving, that we have overtaken the previous cycle, and that would be a massively bullish thing. This is a cool chart as we get into the discussion for today that I want to take a look at with y'all. And I'm jumping over and I'm going to find it right over here. And here we go. This is wild. This chart shows Bitcoin almost perfectly repeating last cycle's stage bull run and beginning of the bear market. The beginning or the end, though? Let's take a look at it. And is it the beginning or end it's pointing to? Let's take a look. So I'm going to go with the visual effects over there. Yeah, the structure is so similar. And where they have the arrow, it's almost the end. The arrow over here is actually the three arrows blow up. That's actually into July of 2022. Yes, Bitcoin made a lower low on the FTX blow up. It's debatable whether or not it would have if FTX didn't blow up, but FTX did blow up. I just want to go ahead and check that out with you over here. And this is where that pattern that the overlay is happening ends up over here. I'm sorry, June. I knew it was June 2022. And then you could see that we wound up. This is the CZ being like, oh yeah, we're gonna buy FTX, and then like moments later on X is like, yeah, no, what, no, we're not. And then Bitcoin took on the massive dump down. Is that? Yep. No, that might have been right here. These two candles. Let's zoom in a little bit. These two candles is that. I digress. Anyway, so Bitcoin wound up taking or making about another 12% drawdown from where that person that says this chart says that we're looking 62,000 Bitcoin, well above 55,000 Bitcoin is cheap. Where is that level? I don't, we'll look on Monday. I have multiple areas that level could line up from. And I want to just look at one chart with you all. Right there. So, by the way, that little line we had over there wound up being perfect breakdown, retest, resumption. So yeah, 62,000 Bitcoin seems more than reasonable to me that that's in the cards. Is now the opportunity? Will it be lower or will it be lower than that? Right? Those are the questions that you need to be asking yourself. But jumping back over and trying to find this person and the Bitcoin therapist, it is a fractal that aligns for sure in my book, but it also points to, if it were a fractal that played out again, that we are a lot closer to the bottom of the bear market than the beginning of, which would be a wild card for many, but we'll see. It's all variable. This was conversation started yesterday inside the Discord, and some people were looking at what's going on with the Epstein files. I have to say, I have not read any of this particular Epstein file dumps because you know what? Years ago, I've gone down some pretty dark rabbit holes about what certain people do. I don't. I think I pretty much am well schooled on what takes place within these secret societies and entrapment, and more importantly, my heart can't take just what these kids have gone through, and I don't. I know enough that I don't want to know anymore. We'll just leave it at that. And I wait for the prosecution of those who have been involved in the Epstein files. And I firmly support Elon on that view. Waiting and waiting. So the question came up and was talked about in Discord. So I was like, you know what? I think it's important that I begin a little bit of a digging into what's going on here so I could offer my own opinion on it. Stephen, I did get to watch this video, and it talks about Andy back on the island, specifically talking about Adam back, sourced in the Bitcoin white paper. Epstein was an early investor in Blockstream, and there are questions about why that was allowed. It seems that Adam has visited the island. It's pretty easy to be blackmailed. I don't know, but I do know I found it weird. Did you find it weird when Adam Back became an investor in a Bitcoin treasury company? I found that part weird, but we will talk about that a little bit later. I said, you know what? This was yesterday at 6 o'clock. I'm going to start with Simon Dixon. That's how I'm going to start my rabbit hole. And it wound up being a pretty good place to start. And the reason I was starting with Simon is because I know, like Adam Back, he lives on the same island. I forgot the name of the place where they live in Europe. I'm thinking of some Catholic crusaders who does anyone know where Simon or Adam Back live? But anyway, I know that he's an early investor in Bitcoin and Bitcoin companies, and I just wanted to see what his view was on this. And by the way, I think this is important that despite these relentless attacks, and Bitcoin has been attacked ever since inception, Bitcoin's integrity remains intact. Just keep that in the forefront of your mind. So let me just play this 30 seconds here.
Sad story if this Andy Back turns out to be Adam Back, as I would guess he is. This is a very sad day for Bitcoin, as well as for those who move in the same spheres as Adam Back. So we'll continue to monitor this as.
And if so, and if it were him at this point in time, all I would say is that, you know what, likely it's probably a good idea that you don't speak or give your opinion on Bitcoin any further. That's where I would leave that. But I think this is a good resource. This resource is from, I'm going to put this into the comments over here because I encourage you all to watch this and make up your own minds and use this as a resource. Okay, a resource. And oh no. Sentiment follows price closely, and usually when the most people are the most bullish or bearish is usually when you have a turn. So let's take there are 3 videos here in this series, and I've watched the first in completion 140 minutes, 1 hour and 40 minutes. And then it has also an outline. So you could read what's going on over here. I recommend the video for many, many different reasons. And not because it's the truth. It's just a vantage point that in a different era we would not be privy to. And I highly encourage listen to it. Some of the things that they talk about in this video, though, or some of the things mentioned in this video, though, first of all, that Bitcoin is an open protocol, and that even if influenced by, let's say, Epstein, who likely tried to influence it, and more likely that Epstein was interested in Bitcoin not because he thought it was a threat to the dollar, but because for his own purposes he felt like this might be a good way to do all the dirty things that he was doing. But I think more importantly over here, when we talk about is Bitcoin corrupted, and by the way, that I've always thought, I never even wanted to say it out loud. I always thought if you wanted to corrupt Bitcoin, you go for the developers. And there's a lot for us to consider and talk about over there. But is what, I mean, Simon is under, and that's why I encourage you to listen to this video. I really do. Simon is under the impression that, of course, Wall Street is trying to corrupt it. He's hitting on Bitcoiner things. He's hitting on the fact that, as a Bitcoiner, you should self-custody Bitcoin. And all of these products that are being offered, whether or not it's IBIT from BlackRock, whether or not it's MicroStrategy, any other treasury company, they are all, let's say, containing Bitcoin. And I agree with that. I very strongly agree with that. And I think you should listen to it. I think it should be required listening. You don't have to agree with any of it, but you should listen to it. And he also goes on, by the way, and points out Jack Mallers. And we know Jack, and Jack seems like a good guy. And we know that Jack is partnered with Cantor Fitzgerald. Jack is partnered with Tether, and Cantor Fitzgerald, right? You guys all know what happened on I know it's anyway, I don't even want to talk about it. What was in Building 7, by the way? Was Building 7 hit by a plane? There was so much loss of life that day, we had to pull it. We had to pull it the day before. Donald Rumsfeld on TV. Yeah, the Pentagon has $2 trillion unaccounted for. You know where all the records were, right? You know what building they were in. The next, anyway. We could go back over here for a second. As we continue this conversation, and Jack, and he's saying that, listen, do not, like, these Bitcoin loan companies, all they're trying to do is get your Bitcoin, right? And I'm sure right now there are people going through margin calls. And if not, and if Bitcoin goes lower, soon to be. And it's just a worthy, the video is good enough that I'm looking forward to today watching part 2, Epstein, macro and market manipulation, and just seeing whether or not it's good enough for, look over here, the Trojan horse of Bitcoin backed loans, Jack Mallers of Strike, partner with Cantor Fitzgerald. I didn't even see this. I took this from the first episode. Part 3, Epstein, Trump, and the geopolitical consequences. Listen, I'm into it all, and I want to know just what this vantage point says, and then I'll decide what I want to take from it, what I don't, and what's left undecided. I think it's a great vantage point. By the way, here we go. This is a chart overlaid. We're going to keep going here, but I thought that I should lighten it up for 1 second. And this is a chart showing software, iShares expended tech software ETF overlaid with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is software. Software is getting demolished over here right now. And is that because of the advent of AI? The devs I know, which are the greatest of all time, they have recently, when I say recently, over the last few months, been able to take their own skills to an enormous next level. I mean, they're living in the future today, and they're doing it because of all of these tools. Cursor AI, Opus 4.5, Claude, and it's they're living the future today. And there's the idea, which is now understood by many, that software is irrelevant tomorrow. You don't like the software is irrelevant tomorrow, and Bitcoin is software. And is Bitcoin, is AI going to be able to create a different Bitcoin? Right? Is AI gonna should Bitcoin as software be by the market right now grouped into this, which is rightfully so? Software is going to take a big hit. I don't know. It's for sure what's happening right now. It seems mispriced to me, but we will find out. There are many reasons given for the crash in Bitcoin and crypto. Most are ignoring the equity in the room. No, it isn't quantum. I think it plays a role though when you have people like Ray Dalio talking about the risk of quantum computing out there. I think people see that. Liquidity, yeah, that's been a major role in everything that's been happening as liquidity has been going out hard. That's changing now. I think that both of those things have played a role. Fed policy, yeah, the QT was what caused this little bit of liquidity drag that forced them to stop QT and begin running the balance sheet the other way. Yes, I think all three of those things up until this point have played a direct role. Speaking of the best ever, Microsoft Office is dead 6 to 12 months. I could just make my own. Barely use Excel anymore. I just use Cursor to write a custom analysis and HTML interactive chart. It's unbelievable. You know, living in the future today is unbelievable. Some people don't think that that's true. I mean, listen, I could go get on Cursor and I could try to create something silly like a website, and I'm gonna run into the most problems. Someone who's got the skills, like massive skills, they take these tools and they're building things, and I've seen it, and I've seen their work. They're building things that you could not comprehend, and they're doing it like this. So listen, you have no idea and you'll get left behind, and that's fine. I really don't care. Actually, it'd be better if you see you later. So let me explain what's going on. Yes, all those things are completely relevant. Is Trump? I think that the launching of the Millennial coin and the Trump coin were extraordinarily awful. I think that talking about a shitcoin reserve on your Truth Social that included Cardano and the likes was absolutely the worst. But I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. So he's talking about, I've been watching the relationship because Bitcoin is software code and AI is eating software as lunch. So they're dumping Bitcoin too. He's just making the correlation between what we're looking at here between software and Bitcoin. And I'm going to say, well, they seem to be closely correlated right now in their price action, but I see a distinct difference between software and Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is not just you could just take the code and copy paste it. It's the network effects that make Bitcoin what it is. Here you can see software getting smoked, RSI at 6.9. Look how look over here. It was just as low during the great financial crisis and wound up recovering, but making some lower lows as well. It did recover there, though, when it was last oversold during the great financial crisis and have new highs before the down. Sorry, I haven't seen these charts yet, so I'm looking right now. What's going on? All right. Let's get back. This is Huddle Knot. I don't know. Anyway, 14 people reviewed and approved the highly controversial uncap of OP return. 1,216 people already running BIP 110. Core push to change, fully incompatible with Bitcoin's philosophical soul. That would very predictably fracture the social layer. They don't represent Bitcoiners anymore. Worthy of mention. Who controls Bitcoin? This is Simon again. It's so funny. I watch a video of Simon on the YouTube, and then in my X right away it appears. GitHub comment access is limited to a set of maintainers who can merge reviewed code, not change Bitcoin by degree. The current Bitcoin Core maintainers will commit access included. The charlatan headed January 26th. Importantly, none of these individuals named in the Epstein files have Bitcoin Core commit access. Even after code is merged, node operators choose whether to run it. Are you running a node? Is it time to go back to your roots? Is it easier to hold shares of IBIT, or is it more difficult to self-custody and run a node? Node operators choose whether to run it. Miners choose whether to mine it. Users enforce the rules they accept. Consensus, not GitHub, decides. Given the sensitivity around trust, those named in the Epstein files should voluntarily distance themselves from GitHub contributions if they want to act in Bitcoin's best interest and avoid perception risks, unless you're too scared because you are compromised, of course. All right, just jumping through. Nick Carter, a voice. This post has since been deleted, it seems, but he's like me. I write multiple detailed essays on why quantum themes are accelerating and Bitcoin devs should act proactively. And I've had this conversation recently, and I've said, listen, the priority of Bitcoin devs and the community should be putting in place quantum proof protocols, and that like at least have a plan in place, right? And to show when Ray Dalio is like, Bitcoin's a risk because of quantum computing, well, here's how we're addressing that. Top long tenured Bitcoin dev ignored this FUD. It's under control. Look elsewhere. And people wonder why every institutional holder is revisiting their Bitcoin position. I think so. It makes sense to me that this and the quantum factor here has weighed on Bitcoin's price over the last couple of months, I'll put it. But again, I believe that this is mostly because of what's happening here with liquidity. I think it's going to stabilize as liquidity begins to run up. It's not going to be outright QE and a major expansion, but even in this over here was enough to send equity markets roaring and Bitcoin recovering well before and into the halving until the lockdowns happened. Jumping back over. And so meanwhile, Coinbase launches Quantum Research Council. Other people taking it seriously. By the way, I had no idea that Epstein was an early investor 2013 into Coinbase. I think that's interesting. Very much so. Solana starts testing post-quantum signatures. Why is the Bitcoin not doing it? Ethereum declares post-quantum top strategic priority, as it should be. Why is the Bitcoin community not doing it? Zcash, Starnet add quantum to their roadmaps. I think it's really important over here. And then at what point will Bitcoin fork into post-quantum compatible addresses, right? And then you still have the early Satoshi era coins, right? That are in wallet addresses that have not been touched and will not be upgraded and become a honeypot for those that are, well, pioneering quantum computing, I suppose you could say. And, is it going to happen at 50K, 10K, 1K? It could sell off to 30K and they still wouldn't. Price doesn't matter. And we don't take cues from the market. This is worthy of just talking about today because this is where the devs should be focused and prioritizing, and they're not. It's something to consider. Don't forget, bullish case for Bitcoin at CTM has always been it's a hedge against the debasement of the underlying. Yes, a new Fed chair that's not into QE. Do I think that he's going to be able to stop the Ponzi? No, I don't. Continued on the further adoption. Could this be a factor that prevents the further adoption? Yeah, it's worthy of looking at, right? So this is the other view. This is the other view, and I want to share all views because my view is more along despite these relentless attacks, Bitcoin's integrity remains intact. I do believe that. And I do believe that Bitcoin is always under attack ever since inception. Nothing's different today. And I think more than the worry of Epstein trying to corrupt Bitcoin, for me, the worry is that Wall Street is trying to corrupt Bitcoin. And you have to ask, don't trust, verify, but, is Michael Saylor a good actor? I don't know. Is strategy good for Bitcoin? I don't know. Is Jack Mollers good for Bitcoin? Are Bitcoin loans good for Bitcoin? You just have to ask yourself all these things and be willing to look at things from all different sides and come to your own conclusions. So let me get this straight. Jeffrey Epstein admits he spoke with Satoshi, paid the salaries of roughly 60% of Bitcoin core developers, was a lead investor in Blockstream, responsible for the majority of major protocol changes, the centralized Lightning Network and significant network influence, and was the #1 largest single investor in Coinbase. Epstein was also by the way, I'm just reading what this post says. I have not verified any of this, right? And from what I understand, as Adam Back said, he said that Epstein was an early investor in Blockstream and then divested pretty early. So again, I'm just reading what's here. And everything else is just someone else's opinion. That's what we've been saying from the beginning. Epstein was also close friends with Brock Pierce, major red flag, founder of Tether, the largest fraud in the world, and key player in the manipulating price of Bitcoin. Pierce was also, guys, do stablecoins work without Bitcoin? So it's very important. Pierce was also coincidentally accused of sexual abuse in 2000 and then arrested in Spain in 2002 for child sex abuse. The emails revealed that he had long discussions, presumably other stuff, at Epstein's Manhattan townhouse, where Pierce urged Epstein to fund Tether. They even discussed the buyout of Mt. Gox, which later spectacularly rug pulled and collapsed. Epstein also had talks with Blockstream executives where they described Ripple and Stellar as bad for the ecosystem we are building, effectively working to freeze them out of the shared funding circles. This coincides with the timing in the beginning of the Bitcoin maximalist campaign that spread widespread information about both projects. See, that's not Bitcoin maximalist, as you know, was started by Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, who used to work for Bitcoin maximalists. And anyway, I don't agree. I don't have to agree. It's just someone else's opinion. It was also revealed that Epstein was close friends with Larry Summers, Obama Clinton ally, who helped create Digital Currency Group, which owns Foundry, the USA largest Bitcoin mining pool in the world, Grayscale GBTC, and CoinDesk. Okay. And then TXMC adds, and Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor in New York was Howard Nutlick. the former CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, the custodian for Tether's treasuries, and he is now Commerce Secretary. Interesting. Now, I said to you yesterday, one of the reference points that I will look towards, and so I look forward to the next episode of Rabbit Hole Recap, and I want to hear Matt Odell's opinion because I've been listening to those guys for 8 years, and I'm interested to hear the opinion. Look, guys have been right about a lot, long about a lot, but early on, 8 years ago, taught me a lot about Bitcoin, and I don't see that type of education in the Bitcoin ecosystem anywhere today as was given. So that's, if you want to go back down a rabbit hole, go listen to some Rabbit Rehole podcast back in 2017, 2018, and you can get a real Bitcoin education. So this is the first, this is not Matt Odell. I'm more interested in Matt's opinion. This is his co-host, Marty Bent. And let's hear what this says. It's long, 3 minutes. Maybe we listen to the whole thing. Maybe we don't.
So did Epstein have influence on Bitcoin? Short answer is no. You know, I've watched these things a lot. I'm very aware of it. A lot of the controversy around this.
So hold on. One of the things mentioned in that Simon Dixon video, though, which was interesting, he talks about those recent large sales of Bitcoin, and I think that I think the one that when Galaxy, remember when Galaxy was the custodian behind that major sale of Bitcoin from an OG wallet. Simon says like he was around at the time and has a good idea of who were the potential parties who owned that much Bitcoin. And he says he thinks that it was Peter Thiel who sold that Bitcoin. You all know what transaction I'm talking about. It was during this past 6 months. And he's goes on to say, remember, it was around that time too that Peter Thiel was like, I no longer believe in Bitcoin. I remember it very clearly. And then that sale took place. Simon believes that Thiel's always been a bad actor inside Bitcoin, and that he potentially is the one. It's good to do it. I love it. Yeah. I look, you up until today, and because a lot of people were talking and asked, like, I think it's worthy of having this discussion today. I agree with y'all so much, but we always said depending on continued network adoption, and we always have to watch for something that would not be out on our radar, right? And I felt like is definitely worthy of having this discussion together, just so we could cover some different vantage points and views. All right. They're good for companies. So like pretend that Cantor Fitzgerald was a bad actor, right? Again, what happened on 9/11? I mean, I don't know how. Look, the truth is probably Howard, who was taking his kid to school that day, he lost like all his friends and probably who consider family and coworkers, and I certainly don't know what happened or anything like that, but it's just good to be aware of just what happened and then make up your mind. By the way, one thing that happened on that day in 9/11 that no one talks about, and I cannot find on the internet, it's been scrubbed for so long. I'm talking like for like the last like 10, 15 years it's been scrubbed, and I've looked for it. Does anyone know about this story about all the gold that was being moved that the fire department came upon in that tunnel, and then the feds pulled out their badges and made them go away? I've seen photos with my own eyes back during 2001 when this was happening in real time. I've seen the photos, and they don't exist anymore. But a lot of things were happening, at that was a particular week. So anyway, back towards it. Oh, so I guess I was saying Cantor Fitzgerald, Tether, partners with Jack Mahler, Bitcoin backed loans, good for the company, but is the ultimate to try to get Bitcoin that was in self custody into centralized hands.
The thing was he donated money to a thing called the Digital Currency Initiative. Actually, I think he donated to Media Lab, which ran Digital Currency Initiative. I ran the Bitcoin Foundation, actually, and the Bitcoin Foundation used to fund Bitcoin developers, and then MIT took that over. And
Okay. Let's do this. To save you 3 minutes of watching, he basically says Jeffrey Epstein didn't influence us, but we took his pedo money. Maybe that could be the case. And either way, I firmly believe, despite the relentless attacks, Bitcoin's integrity remains intact. The network was designed for a layered defense against any single point of failure or control. It starts with the open source code, which anyone can review for backdoors and vulnerabilities. Now, an accomplished dev would know whether or not any backdoors could be hitting within the libraries that was in that code. And I don't know if you review the code that you necessarily have access to all of the libraries and could see whether or not there are any vulnerabilities or backdoors. So I imagine, since I can't verify that has to remain a question for me. So maybe that code is secured by a globally distributed network of miners, the largest supercomputer in the world, making it impossible for any single entity to shut it down. But the miners don't have absolute power. Their work is constantly validated by thousands of independent users running their own nodes. This is how you could protect Bitcoin today. And not enough Bitcoiners run nodes and or are therefore protecting the network, enforcing the rules of the network, and providing a critical check and balances. And if all else fails, the ultimate power lies with the user, who can resist unwanted changes from developers or colluding miners through a user-activated soft fork. And then we have this, but I don't even want to. I don't know. Here we are. CTM on the right side across markets. Bitcoin is crashing. Markets right now seem on the edge, but most definitely not crashing. And for sure, we are positioned on the right side of the market. Everyone, stay safe. Yeah, Cabby. Everyone, have a beautiful day. I won't see you tomorrow, and I won't see you Friday. We're back at it Monday. Until then, everyone, God bless you. Thank you for being a blessing. Everyone, have a beautiful day. I'll talk to you soon.